All right, we're good.
All right. All right, so let's call to order the meeting of the Bath Charter Township Planning Commission. It's April 11th, 2023. If you need an agenda, I think there are some up on the podium. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as submitted?
I'll move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
The motion is approved. Are there any conflicts of interest that commissioners would like to declare? Hearing none, seeing none, let's move on. So we have two opportunities for general public comment. You can speak to agenda or non-agenda items. So if you'd like to address the planning commission, please come to the podium and state your name and tell us what's on your mind.
Thank you for the opportunity to let me speak. My name is Jared Harmon. I'm the Executive Director of Mid-Michigan Land Conservancy. And I'm here today to bring up a topic that was, I believe, discussed at the last Planning Commission meeting. This would be an ordinance amendment to allow protection of the natural areas in Bath Township. There's a current ordinance that is preventing us from receiving a property due to road frontage requirements in the township. And my proposition would be to amend that language to allow lower road frontage requirements for properties that are permanently protected as natural areas that are open to the public. Our group, our nonprofit, we work in 7 counties, specifically in Clinton County as well, and we protect agricultural lands and natural resources from conversion through agricultural and conservation easements. That was my only suggestion, would be to allow the proposed amendment change so that we could potentially receive that donation. If we receive that donation of land, we would steward it, remove invasive species, maintain trails, and open to that property to the public for all time.
Thank you. You may want to, I don't know if commissioners, because we did talk about it last time, if commissioners have any questions for you.
Have you approached the township?
Yes, we have already attended a ZBA meeting, and we have been working with the township about this issue.
So I can kind of keep, so we covered it in last planning commission, but
Oh,
the
okay.
meeting before that meeting was the ZBA, and so I sit on the ZBA, so.
Oh, right.
So the idea was that, the Bonnie Meadows development, they have,
Yes.
yep, so to the north of the Bonnie Meadows development, there's about an 80-acre parcel, is that
I
correct?
actually went over there and droned that.
Yeah.
The entire thing, yeah.
So the developer would like to donate that parcel to the Mid-Michigan Land Conservancy.
Correct.
That's all good, but because Bath Township doesn't have a land use for basically open space, the closest thing we have is commercial recreational. Commercial recreational, as part of our ordinance, you need to have 150 feet minimum frontage. They currently don't have that, so they went to the ZBA essentially asking for a variance for that. We didn't have really any kind of flexibility there because we didn't have a land use category essentially, which was open space, nonprofit or something, or permanently protected open space. So we couldn't grant the variance, but, I mean, it raised the conversation about, you know, this seems like something we should be able to do,
Yeah.
but we don't have a land use category to allow us to do it. And I think that's what this gentleman is proposing, is to amend the ordinance so that we can do that by recognizing a land use category that doesn't have the same kinds of regulations around, that commercial recreation would have,
Interesting.
essentially, yeah.
Yeah, the last I heard about that parcel was that the developer was gonna put one big house on the
That's
high
the alternative.
road.
That's
Yeah.
the alternative.
That'd be unfortunate, because
Yeah,
it's
so
pretty,
the developer and
Pretty cool
MMLC
area.
We're hopeful that we can do this proposal, and it will allow us to permanently steward that property and keep it open to the public, so that high point is very, protected for permanently with a conservation easement.
right.
And so we can allow the public to go out there and enjoy the views and recreate and enjoy that space for free.
It's too bad Phragmites aren't a viable cash crop, because
Exactly, that was
you're
one of
gonna make
my,
$1 million back there.
yeah, we'd be hopeful over time to restore that property by targeting that Phragmites as well, because invasive species are something that we manage under natural areas. And there's plenty of it out there, but it's something that we would be interested in taking on.
Yeah.
So, Miles, is this a formal proposal for an ordinance amendment, or is this?
Well, we haven't received a formal
Okay.
proposal for a text amendment, which obviously an applicant can submit that at any time, and then that would put tight time standards on how staff would have to bring that back to the
Okay.
planning commission. So that's a good way to do it. There is a little bit of a fee associated with that, but it would bump this project up past the other things in the queue. cause there are a number of things in McKeel.
It is on our radar, and I think we're really interested in the issue, for sure.
I would like to, as part of the planning for the township, I would like to have him educate us a little bit on what his organization may theoretically be able to provide to the township.
You mean with that parcel?
Not with that parcel, with just land conservancy, conservation easements, things of that nature. That could be something
Oh, just-
that could be of great use for the township in the future.
I see what you're saying.
You know, it really made my ears perk up when he said they maintain the trails.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, you're looking at the trail maintenance team right here. But we always appreciate volunteers.
it's you, yeah, oh yeah, heavens yes.
So that was, actually, the initial proposal didn't include, I don't think, an easement. And we encouraged them to consider that just because they wanted, I think, originally a memo, kind of memo of understanding. And so that doesn't have the legal sort of force as an easement would, and so we encouraged them to kind of
Well, yeah, that was, he came
consider
in
that language. And I would expect that, you know, if in ordinance we did this, it would have to include some protections that it would be permanently protected conservation land, yeah.
Yeah, we'd be open
Through
to
an easement.
exploring that if
Yeah.
that was the requirement to,
Yeah,
would be giving the legal guarantee that that
Right.
land is protected, not just a handshake agreement, say so, or
Right.
an MOU.
yeah, yeah.
You have a standard boilerplate that you go over with that and sign the, probably with the state then, huh?
Yeah, in this case, we wouldn't be the ones doing the easement on that land, because it'd be a conflict of interest, but we'd be working with another entity that could do that, and then we would just be the ones that own the property.
Who is that?
It could be like Michigan Nature Association, there's other smaller land conservancies, around us, this region, that would be willing to partner with us.
When you say it was a conflict of interest, why would that be?
It wouldn't be proper for us to write the conservation easement and then be the ones in charge of monitoring the easements, it would just be a conflict of interest in that way. So we prefer another entity to hold the easement, and then we would be the owners of the property. Now, if we have received lands that we have done conservation easements on, and they were donated to us later in time, but that's just circumstances that don't always happen. So in this case, we would expect another entity, an accredited entity would be able to do the conservation easement, and we would be the fee simple owners of the property and open it to the public.
In this case, we could have Eastbrook Homes could be the entity that we enter agreement with for the conservation easement, and then they donate the land with the easement to these
Right,
folks.
yeah, that would make sense. What kind of public access would be necessary to have viable use of the property?
This property, we would intend to only have foot trails, the requirements of the public needs to stay on these trails. So we only need to access just several footpaths. There's already existing easements that are not 150 feet, but there is easement access to this property on several locations. We would simply maintain a very well-used existing footpath for the public. We would have it open dawn to dusk.
How would you police that?
Typically, when we have a national area, we have a local land steward who watches the property frequently. Our office is in Okemos, so we're pretty close. But we like to have a land steward and the locals that give us an intel of what's going on. And that's how we like to, have communication with someone there who's by the natural area who can inform us of what's going on at that place. So I intend that we would have a local land steward that would keep us up to date on what's going on. We're required to check the properties once a year, but we'd be checking it much more frequently because we'd be opening the trails up, doing trail maintenance, doing cleanups, doing invasive species removal with other partners.
On a similar segue, if you will, what about hunting on the land?
It depends. Typically in areas, we do allow hunting in some of our natural areas. It depends on the neighbors. If it's safe, typically we allow archery on natural areas that are close to the public. In this case, with it being so close to development, so many people, I wouldn't expect that we'd allow hunting on this parcel. It's not out of the question, but if we essentially allow hunting if we feel it's safe and it's not gonna cause issues with the local public.
The reason I ask is because there are several deer blinds back there.
Yeah, and that's one
And
of the
they've been
challenges.
there for a long time.
Yeah, I know, and I know there's guys out there hunting right now
Yeah.
against the wishes of the current owner, but that's something we'd be monitoring for as well, to make sure that if we do not allow hunting, that we will not allow anyone out there. Only hunters that are allowed on our property have specific permission from MMLC, and we only allow 1 hunter per 10 acres on a property potentially, because we don't want, problems with the public, problems with our hunters, problems with the animals. So we really like to kind of police the hunting on our natural areas. I don't see this one being one that we allow hunting on, just by its location. Unless we're receiving too much damage from deer.
Yeah, well,
to the natural
80
plants.
acres is quite considerable, you know, so
Yeah,
that's potentially 800.
and in that location, I can't see us ever doing anything beyond archery.
Archery would, you know, if you limited it to that, I guess that would be, the reason I mention this and bring it up is because this topic is coming up more and more when land becomes private and becomes a conservation trust, if you will.
Yeah, and we're definitely, we're pro hunting because hunting dollars provide a lot of money for conservation, and it's a great tool for managing the too many deer we have in our natural areas that hurt our natural vegetation, so. Again, it just depends, but it'd be board voted, and it'd be done in a way that we feel would be safe for the public and the hunters.
I have a great idea. Teach deer to eat Phragmites.
That's something I've been waiting on for a long time.
I don't think it's.
I used to do invasive species as a job, and
Yeah.
we're hopeful that there's something else down the pipeline that can control that stuff.
Do you have his contact information?
We do, yeah.
Yeah,
And,
I was just gonna ask it, the next thing, do we?
I'll
have-
provide you a brochure too, is I could speak sometime on our other services, those being agricultural easements. We'd like to see more farmland permanently protected, and as well as the natural areas that we work on. As we're very pro, smart growth, for people and protecting the land as well. I'll provide you our brochure so you can have,
Thank you.
my email and my cell phone on there. And if anyone, I only have 3, but if anyone is missing my contact information, I can get that to you.
Yeah.
Why don't you give one to Ray?
Give one to the chair.
Yeah, maybe.
I may have given you one
I
already.
think so, yeah.
And that's all I'm proposing right now. I'd like to, like I said, I'd like to be present in the future to speak on the importance of donating this land and the proposed amendment change, and to speak about other services that we offer to the community. We currently have, I believe, 8 conservation agriculture easements in Clinton County, and we'd like to keep doing more work in the region to keep some of that land open.
Thanks for coming, I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Any other public comment at this time? Okay, so let's move on to the minutes. We have the minutes of March 28th. Any comments on or changes to those March 28 minutes?
We're missing,
Missing me.
What's that?
Missing me.
Oh,
Great,
yeah, thanks.
our bad. Alright, we'll make that.
Other comments or corrections? If not, a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So move. Seconded.
Support, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Miles, any communications at this time?
Not this time.
Okay. 2 items under old business. We're gonna take the Park Lake Apartment Homes, a site plan amendment. All that information's in our packet. Miles, do you wanna lead us into this?
Yeah, so, just to go over how we got here, so a while back, it was probably, mid-2022, special use permit and, site plan review got approved for this development. It was originally, 5 structures at 40 dwelling units, and then probably about a month and a half ago, these gentlemen came back for a site plan amendment going from 5 structures to now 3 structures, still at 40 dwelling units. The structures themselves changed a little bit in nature, parking changed in nature. This is opinion of the planning department that, we were in favor of the site plan change. We thought there was more green space, we thought it was a more efficient flow of traffic, we thought it was a better parking plan. We aesthetically liked these structures more. So we thought it was across the board, pretty positive changes to the site. And these gentlemen are here tonight seeking action for the site plan amendment with a conditional approval. In the staff report that was included in your packet, I tried to organize it to, I know there's a lot in there, so it can be overwhelming, but I tried to say, under the proposed conditions, section, the previous conditions of approval, and then a second section, newly proposed conditions of approval. There were 2 items I wanna call out that are not in the conditions, but, I think the planning commission should have a discussion after talking with the new police chief and the road commission. There's 2 items that they wanted to address, I'll go with the road commission's item first. And this is a pretty minor ask, and if anything, it'll probably save the developer some time and money, so hopefully they'll be in favor of it. And we do appreciate how they did this, cause I think it was in an effort to provide good screening. But the road commission just has some concerns for maintenance and long-term upkeep of the roads. They went with the larger species of trees and the right-of-way between the sidewalk and the road. the road commission was in favor of those getting reduced to some kind of dwarf species of tree, just a smaller tree, that way roots won't grow over time under the sidewalk and road and cause any maintenance issues. I would assume the developers did have an effort to screen, which is what we usually ask of developers. It's in this rare circumstance, we're asking them to actually do a little less. So that would be one suggested condition, and then the police chief has been a little bit more active in the site plan reviews that he's been sending than his predecessor. And the township has evolved, we've recently been talking about some security camera concerns on some of our apartment complexes on the Chandler corridor, because of how things have been happening lately in the township, I guess. The police chief wanted to talk about a security camera system, on this development. Once again, there's always a needle to thread, so kind of the needle here is safety and then privacy. And kind of, finding a good balance between those two concerns. So he did ask for a number of things in his agency review, but after speaking with him today to get more details on exactly what he's looking for, he suggested phrasing the conditions something like this, just to give the developers a little bit of latitude. So I'll read this real quick. It says, so see what you guys think about this, and obviously, staff is looking for a broader conversation to be had, regarding this issue, but the suggestion was that a security plan, detailing the camera setup be submitted to the Bath Township Police Department prior to occupancy being issued. So it wouldn't hold up the pull of a building permit, but they would like it prior to occupancy, that way they could even go on site and see how it actually got installed. And then the police department is seeking that standards 1, 3, 4, and 5 of their agency review be met. So those are the standards that detail more around the actual, capacity for the cameras and, the regulations on how long they want the video footage to be retained by the developer, in case they needed to pull it. But standard 2, they wanted to amend a little bit, because after I went over with them today, how the building's actually designed and how many cameras it will require for the developer to do what they're asking. The police chief wanted to amend that a little bit to give the developers more latitude. All he's essentially asking for is that the vast majority of parking have a camera, the ingress and egress be able to be seen via camera, and that the access doors. Realistically, after plotting some things out with him, we think that could probably be accomplished by 3 cameras on the corners of each buildings, making for a total of 9 cameras. And he's not asking that this be done by some, I don't know, like with the marijuana development we just had come in the township, they had some, very high-end security consultant come in and install some crazy. You could go to in his words, you could go to Home Depot and get a Nest security system, you'd be fine with that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's open it up for comments from planning commissioners.
I think it's a lot better with the changes personally.
We did see a preview of this, I don't remember when, but not too long ago.
Yeah, about a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
Miles pretty much covered it, that's good. Yeah.
I do have a question about the street tree issue. I mean, I understand the rationale here, but, there's not necessarily a correlation between the size of the tree and the damage that the roots can do, right? Because there's different trees with different root systems.
Okay.
Right, so you can get a tree with a taproot, which essentially, it's a deep root system, but it does not extend laterally. And I think the worries that we have are the trees that have that extensive lateral root system, because they upend the sidewalk and cause problems. So you
And
had
a
it-
big canopy too.
The canopy as well for trimming of power lines and such.
Okay,
Yes, 'cause
Okay.
right now, sorry to interrupt.
no, well, I was just gonna say, I mean,
Okay, so the county, many years ago, I don't know, I think you were on the committee at the time, and they went through and they trimmed all the stuff back. Now they don't do that anymore, they do, but it's very minimal. Used to, be more aggressive on it. So they're trying to get out of the maintenance of having to take out trees and keep the roads open. They're on the north side of the road, so they're not gonna really cast a lot of shadow, but they still have a lot of maintenance on trees, so they're trying to keep, I'm sure, keep the canopy down as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know what is there a way to call out what them trees are? It's, I can't see the number. I mean, if they're
They could
oaks.
probably, you guys might be able to speak
You
better.
mean the
to
trees
that.
on the site plan
Yeah,
currently?
right there it is.
It's on the
What
planning schedule someplace.
number is on the bottom? of it?
Kentucky coffee tree, it says.
So them are big trees.
Okay,
Big
that was
trees
the only
with
one I
lots of
saw.
seeds.
4ZS.
Right there, Miles.
Yeah,
And
this
that
one,
what
tulip
it's-
tree and pin oak, it looks like. Red oak,
it's ZS, so it's this one.
All them trees are absolutely awesome trees.
yeah.
Yeah,
But when you're coming up Nichols, is it Nichols, Newton Road? You come past the theaters and you make that curve, there used to be the farm there. That big tree right there that has all the debris in the yard out every year, that's Kentucky coffee tree. I don't know if you
yeah.
really see it or not.
I just think it's a real loss to the community.
I do too.
When we can't plant a sizable tree and a street tree, cause they add value first to the neighborhood.
How big a space is that?
Well, I guess if these are dwarf species here and these are larger trees here, I mean, you could, to comply with what the road commission's saying, you could even swap these. You put the bigger trees on the north side of the sidewalk and the dwarf species on the south side.
They have the bigger trees down to the lower elevation probably. Is that a lower elevation?
Not much.
No, it's pretty much the
Depends on what they're
same.
doing.
I mean, after they get done, right
The
now, there's that
earthwork.
berm there, but that's all gonna be flattened out.
Yeah, it's,
Cause we did ask,
sidewalk's gonna have to be replaced and,
cause we do have a lot of, when you have lights, like, so I don't see parking necessarily shining on, so my concern would be if you, as far as the trees blocking stuff, which there's a lot of trees there. Is someone out there with their car warming up in the morning and then it's shining at the church or in that neighborhood while it sits there?
That shouldn't be the case. Most of the parking's on the side and
That's
on
what I
the
was
rear,
just
and that's
noticing.
kind of the
I think that's
benefit of
real.
this site design as well.
is there any reason that it has to be trees? Why not a hedge?
Hedge where?
Yeah, I just think that.
Between the
that's-
sidewalk and the road.
That's really bad for traffic getting out onto the road. You can't-
Plus, I think it would collect garbage and,
Yes.
you know, trash.
Well, that's true.
This can
It
be
also
real
it blocks
nature.
vision too much for traffic.
Yeah. So, I think Mile, your suggestion is a good one, it's just sort of make the bigger trees where those, I'm not sure if those are actually dwarf trees or just smaller trees.
There's, yeah, I mean, they look small here.
Yeah.
Well, there's a landscape plan, tells you what they are.
Yeah, VP, I'm,
He's looking at it.
you see them called out VP. Oh, here it is. Second to last one right here. Forgive me for not knowing all my tree species.
Here.
Huh, okay.
What's that, by Vernon?
Yep, that's what it looks like.
So that's like a bush, right?
Yeah, that's a bush, that's not a tree.
So I don't know, I guess, Dan, you know, just to avoid, a little bit of design by committee, maybe just point out the issue of the road commission has concerns about root depth and canopy height. So maybe just take that into account with the tree species they decide on. There's a lot of good looking street trees that you can still have that mitigate both of those.
Yeah, I guess this was just the language about a dwarf tree, it concerned me a little bit, right? Cause I think there's regular trees that might still fit there.
Yeah.
That they wouldn't necessarily have to be a dwarf tree, which is a special.
Yeah, I'm using the language that they're
Okay,
using.
genetically modified
Are
kind
there
of tree.
power lines along here?
I vote. You know, are there power lines on the
I
front
don't,
there?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't remember seeing them.
They're on the south side of the road, it looks
I
like.
think they're on the south side.
I'm looking at Fetch right now.
Yeah, I was gonna go to maps and drop myself in.
If there's no power lines there,
Then
the
canopy
height of,
doesn't matter.
the height of the tree doesn't matter, right?
I mean, it would absolutely be
And this-
awesome to have them trees.
And this is a suggestion from the road commission, by the way, this isn't a standard, so that's why I didn't put it as a condition, I put it as a discussion item.
Actually, there is a power line going right across, right, literally parallel to the sidewalk. Between the,
really?
between the pavement and the sidewalk.
Oh, interesting.
right where them trees will be.
Alright,
Right
well,
where the
that's
trees would be
unfortunate.
then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with the sort of the general recommendation then, the more general, so.
Yeah, I think it's always good just to say what the, yeah, there it is.
You're right.
I think it's always good just to say what the objective is and let the people that design and pick species for a
Yeah.
living meet the objective.
I would agree with you, Miles.
You can see the tree that's there is pretty small, but it looks pretty big. Can you imagine that down by the street?
That tree is the one you were talking about?
No.
No.
Oh,
But that is you can see how big that tree is, and that's not a quarter of what that coffee tree will be.
Yeah.
That big tree in the background's about the size of it.
Do we need to propose language then, Miles? Are we,
Could we add the condition that a species of tree be updated on the landscaping plan that doesn't have a deep root system and a large canopy?
are they worried about the deep root system, or are they worried about the lateral?
deep-
Lateral root
Lateral
system.
root system,
Right,
yes, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine to me. Any other comments here? We can hear from the applicant. I'm not sure if there's something you want to add to this, but it sounds like.
We can.
Yeah, go ahead. Come up to the podium if you'd like. I mean, we may have some remaining questions here for you, but is there anything that you'd like to add to whatever Miles just sort of introduced?
I don't have a lot to add.
Okay.
And thank you all for your time. There were a couple things that we had discussed last meeting, so I just wanna give a quick update on them.
Good.
Obviously, it's all included in your packet. I'm sure you've seen it already. But we'll just kind of briefly go through it, and then if there are any remaining questions, feel free to please let us know, and we'll happily answer those. So the one item that came up really was, at the last meeting, was just kind of the connectivity of the sidewalks. That was something that was accidentally omitted from the plan initially when
Yeah,
we
sure
had
was.
submitted. Since then, we've gone ahead and updated the plan to include that. So it's very similar to what you saw last time, so there are connections on both sides. So there's a connection that goes down here to, the road side, and then on the east side here, it connects out to, the center drive here. So we do have that connectivity, all the buildings are kind of interlooped with sidewalks and then connection to the outside sidewalk connections. So that was one item that had come up. Another item that came up was really from the, fire marshal, kind of the size of the drives that we had in there, we had them at 18. He asked, or indicated that fire code would require 20 foot, so we went ahead and updated that, so we do have wider drives by about 2 feet more. Outside of that, I think the only other request or thing that came up was really, bringing in some material sample boards. So we went ahead and brought those in. Peter knows way more about them than I would.
Yep, and just to kind of take you briefly through it, there'd be some vinyl siding, it would be double 4-inch siding, so it would, these are a variety of styles here, but this is the style that we'd use. And we'd use somewhere in the area of that kind of a color on it. The roof shingles would be this teak kind of material here that would pair with the siding. The carpeting, we would, the floor covering, we would have, this would be bathrooms, and kitchen flooring, and then the carpet we would have as sort of a tan brown kind of a thing where, it would wear well and, it wouldn't be extremely light, so, dirt would show up and stuff like that. So that basically be the materials that we would, family materials that we would use.
Thank you.
And then, just one other thing,
Yeah.
the tree discussion,
Mhm.
I think we're totally open to any kind of trees you like. I can go back to my landscape architect, talk to her. We do a lot of street trees that kind of meet some of the requirements of what they're looking for. She can certainly come up with a different selection and provide it and, go from there. But we are seeking an approval contingent on all these items that were listed. Happy to work with you guys or answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so other questions, comments?
Question I had, you've got some garage, are there enough garages so every unit will have a garage or not?
No, it's not planned for every unit to have a garage. There are a total of 16 garages and a total of 40 units, so
Okay.
16 out of the 40 units.
That's kind of what I thought, there weren't enough garages, okay, for everybody to have one, yeah.
Yeah, there's one building.
There was a comment in the, I forget who made the comment, but about parking. So you increased the number of parking spaces from 83 to 93. Is that in excess of our current code, or is that meeting code exactly?
That should be not in excess of the current code.
Okay, and you want those spaces? You don't feel like you have excess parking on site?
No, I don't think so. We are
Okay.
counting some of the areas in front of the garages, and these areas here as parking as well. So there's some spots here and here. So I think that what we're showing is what is adequate for the site. I don't think it's increased that much that there would be any real difference from it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I just asked because we had a recent change in the township where we have a little bit more discretion over parking, so
Sure.
I just want to make sure that, I don't want to force you to have more parking than you want, because we can work with you to reduce that
Right.
if you needed it.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I think that's I've seen that, a lot of ordinance coming up nowadays that are similar in nature to that, so we
Yeah.
don't have that sea of asphalt, which is a great ordinance for sure.
Okay. Other comments?
Was there public areas all taken care of?
For what?
Public areas? Like
Public
common
areas?
areas?
Yeah, there was one with a pavilion and a fire pit.
Yeah, they have a master site plan. That's that sheet.
I was just wanting to kind of have it
I
cleaned
think I
up.
have that sheet too, yeah.
Yeah, so this was the same concept that we provided at the first approval, where we've kind of got this recreation path that kind of interconnects the entire development area here. And then it leads to this area where there's kind of a fire pit and kind of a picnic area as well for the public or private uses.
I had one question, and I kind of answered it from a person that lives around there, was, what I told them, they asked me if this was all owned by the same company, would it be run by the same company? And I think, and I apologize, I can't remember your name, but I think you addressed that before.
Yes, it would be.
What I told him is that you guys were you're not the same company, but you were working in concert. And-
Yes,
and
that's accurate.
They specifically asked about the maintenance and things of that nature, so I guess I kind of glossed it pretty well.
Yeah, you covered it.
All right, thanks.
So I think one of your conditions, Miles, was that we had a copy of that joint agreement, right?
It is, and it remains a condition.
Yeah.
So if there are no questions or comments, we can have a motion here to approve the amended site plan, which includes both the existing conditions and the newly proposed conditions.
And when you say newly proposed conditions, does that cover the street condition and the surveillance condition?
Right.
Correct.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, so is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, the same sign. Motion carries. All right. Thanks for coming. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate your time as well, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, the second item under old business is a continuing discussion again. It's on the American Rescue Plan Act funds. So Miles, I think you have a memo, I guess, that you'd like us to review. Is that kind of the idea here?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to?
Yeah, sure.
So we just kinda typed up a simple memo, we did try to keep it, simple, mostly because we wanted to get you guys' feedback on what you thought, and, with this, I guess we're looking for, do you like how we formatted this? Would you guys want these moved in order, or organized in order of priority, or maybe you could even do like, these are our top 3, and then these are some other ones that are priority for us. There's a lot we can do here, but we're just kinda looking for feedback, so as to how this body best feels to communicate this information up to the board of trustees.
Okay, great. Yeah, so everyone has that in front of them, I think. So, one thing that I remember, and I'm not sure it's reflected here, but I know that, I think George actually brought this up in our conversation about roads, was sort of some caveat about not just any road, but kind of major
Main corridors, that's
arterial and main corridors, right?
We forgot about that.
Yeah.
Can
And we
I say-
talked a lot about Webster Road, in fact, right?
Yes.
Cause we already have funds for roads.
Can I say one more thing too? Just in talking about this, you know, if a big priority is sewer, right, let's say. And as it's been talked about a lot in the past, you know, Chandler Road, we're at 0 RDUs. area, basically development's on a standstill until that issue gets fixed. If that is a main issue of, as the planning commission sees it, we could easily spend all 1.3 million on that corridor alone.
Oh, yeah.
So that's something to think about too. If you were, you could even say this in a way of, you could break down like, we feel that 10% should be spent on all of these items and the other 90 maybe on sewer. However you guys wanna do it, I'm just saying, that could also be something you might wanna call out.
So what are your own feelings on sewer expenditures?
Sewer.
Along the lines of what you just said.
I think infrastructure make or breaks economic development. And I think it's rarely talked about in planning and definitely not talked about enough on an academic level. I mean, and Joey, you can probably attest to this, like, I don't know if it's ever talked about in economic development classes. Cause it just totally depends on the municipality, so they don't really cover it, but, yeah, I mean, right now, if we had sewer capacity in the Chandler corridor, Noka Lofts would be building 3 more apartment buildings, like today.
You're talking
But we don't.
south of Clark Road then?
Yeah, or anything on Chandler.
Yeah.
Yeah, really south of Clark Road, anything north of Clark Road on Chandler is a zone for it. But, yeah, I mean, it's a huge hold up to our economic growth on that corridor.
I mean, go ahead, Ray.
Have there been discussions with East Lansing? Can they service that area?
There have been discussions, and they do not want to service that area.
Who?
East Lansing.
Oh,
Cause they have a sewer network just south of there, and it has been discussed, could we take our network there and tap into them? And then, come up with some kind of, agreement. And, the feedback that I've gotten when I asked the same question you just asked was, they do not wanna entertain that thought at all.
Because they do provide sewer for other communities.
And I don't know if it's just because of the type of sewer they would be providing at that area, the density of apartment complexes, maybe they feel like it's too much of a pull on their, or too much of a strain on their network in that area.
There isn't very many people left in East Lansing who worked there like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So it might be worth another poke. Maybe that was a view of a previous administration,
Yeah,
but,
that's a good
you
point.
know, I think even the janitors are gone, so.
Man,
That's a good point.
That's very true.
I'll write that down, that East Lansing could be open.
Yeah.
It's
So
worth
I'm
just like
assuming
one
they
more
were
poke.
worried about the maintenance and all that fun jazz, or?
I think that it's a lot of REUs in a very dense
Yeah.
area, and if their network doesn't, if we're struggling with capacity there, we don't know what their capacity could be.
Oh,
They would be switching a switch overnight if they were to tie us in of taking on another 2,000 REUs, that's a lot to
Right.
take in.
It is.
Yeah.
And they are making significant improvements to their wastewater treatment plant, if they aren't finished already.
Yeah.
So, Ray,
And-
Miles, would you have any input in regards to what, say, just offhand, what $1 million of that ARPA fund would do for the capacity of that corridor?
John, you've said this number a couple of times, we probably need about, we're gonna have to bond no matter what.
Oh, yeah, but I'm just saying, what kind of, knock in a positive way would that $1 million take off from that bond?
It would help us out long-term, it would help out the long-term financial health of this township to spend $1.3 million on sewer, and we'd have to bond significantly less than we would otherwise. So
Well,
it'd
that-
be big.
Several years ago, Ray, we offered Noka Lofts, or whatever you wanna call them, Westpac, the option of paying for sewer in that area so they could expand. And it was only $5 million, so I don't, well, to Noka, for
Yeah.
Westpac, come on, that's
Yeah, no,
chump
I
change.
agree.
So
And then
they passed on it.
They turned it down.
So, and as far as I'm concerned, all the problems we got over there with that development, I don't even wanna spend more taxpayer money to expand it, to be honest with you.
Well, I guess that would come down to putting a pencil to it,
I can't see it's a good return on investment for all the
Yeah.
hassle it is.
And those are fair conversations I had too, and that's why I wanted to say, you could spend all 1.3 there, you could,
I
Yeah.
I
Spend
can
it all
s-
on broadband.
you
Yeah,
could spend
yes,
all on
we could.
broadband, you have a large
spend it all on
industrial
roads.
corridor that's being built out and expanding down Old M78 right now.
Yep,
And they're not served by sewer, so you
some of
could,
that's not.
you could carry the sewer network in that direction as well.
Right.
That would be a good area to expand the network.
Well, and you talked about behind the rental unit at the end of Coleman Road, East Coleman Road. Going that way, you know, theoretically expanding the water and sewer that way.
Yeah, that'd be a good area to expand the water network, we've been thinking about that, so, I mean, there are low hanging fruit for, you could do infrastructure build out here and there between water and sewer, just like we're thinking about sidewalks, we have these small 500-foot
Right.
sections where doing a little bit of sidewalk work could hook in
Yep.
large, you could get large return. You could write this letter in a way to, request that the board work with the township engineer to identify where those low-hanging fruit areas are, and then spend, revenue building out those areas.
Yep.
Or not revenue, but funds.
And I'd say if there's any sewer that needs repair and upgrade, we should spend that money before we spend it on new sewer, on new.
Has SCUMA, have they put in any input into this?
Well, right now, I mean, Webster Road is gonna be lined, I know there's some manhole repairs that have to happen on Ann Drive soon, so there, to John's point, there is a number of repairs in the queue. And you could, that would be another good way to phrase this.
How have they budgeted those?
It's just coming out of, I believe, the general fund.
No, that's come out of the sewer fund.
Sewer fund,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, you guys would know, that's out of my pay grade, I guess.
So I don't
shouldn't
feel
talk
that
about
I'm ready to kind of prioritize any of these things, just because, one recommendation is I think it requires further study, right, than what we're prepared to do right now. I just don't feel like
Absolutely,
we
I
have
agree
all
with
the
you.
information that we need to even conclude some of the language that you're proposing necessarily, right?
Right.
So, I mean, this could be a start, saying we think these are all appropriate, but we could recommend to the board that, I don't know if that looks like an ad hoc committee or something that takes a look at these issues and tries to answer some of the questions and points that we've all raised just now.
Well, they're all valid areas that could potentially, you know, benefit from sewer upgrades or even new installation. Maybe it should be, like you said, an ad hoc committee and weigh it just like you do with the CIP, you know?
And you take into consideration the low-hanging fruit, you take into consideration other funding support for some of these things, but maybe not for others, right? I mean,
They're
I
more
think all of
granular.
these
And
things
return
matter.
on investment.
Right, exactly, right, yeah. I just think there's a bigger conversation here that we shouldn't duck by prioritizing something that we really don't have the information that we need to do so.
Yeah.
Are all the other boards talking about this as well, Miles, or just us? And
No, it's basically just you guys right now trying to get the ball rolling with the, board of trustees.
Okay.
And staff and several members of the board have said they appreciate the planning commission's leadership on this, cause they would like to they feel like this will be useful in getting that conversation started.
I mean, we could take this, they could kick it back to us and say, okay,
We like these.
work
ones.
around these issues and let's
Yeah.
try to get something more formal and prioritize something. We could do it ourselves, I guess, but it may include like a public outreach too, right, on these issues.
Yeah, the only, and I think that would be useful if they did that, the only caveat to that is they're
Time.
working up against time.
For
here.
sure.
You can't,
Yeah, well,
and I'm all about data-driven solutions, but with that time element, at some point, you just gotta make a call.
These have to
Right.
be, these funds have to be,
April of 2020.
spent or appropriated?
Appropriated by
Okay.
April 2024,
Allocated, yeah, okay,
So
Spent
basically
by
one-
2026.
yes.
1 year from now.
yeah. And allocated just means you got a budget and you're allocating
Earmarked.
through the budget, yeah.
Right.
So, Miles, you know more than any of us, you know, where the hot, areas are, you know, where potential room for improvement and growth in building, you know, in commercial development.
I just,
I guess,
Having the
you know,
assessor.
if you could make a list of where those hot points are, you know, if there are 3 of them, if it's, you know, if it's Chandler Crossing, if it's,
I mean, I would definitely want the input from the township engineer, cause they know, I mean,
Yeah.
they're looking at this all day,
but I mean, you have that person on speed dial, basically.
yeah.
Part of what's sort of an underlayer of this is the township's approach to economic development has been less direct, right? Laying, new sewer, new anything for potential future growth has not been our style. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, it just sort of would be a paradigm shift for us as a community.
True.
That's very true.
We've been very reactive. I think that's paid off in some ways, and in other ways, it's sort of burned us.
Well, I think forward thinking is what we should do a little more of.
I mean, really, this is, this
Kinda
lands
get ahead of the
squarely in
curve.
what the mission of the planning commission should be doing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Around these big issues. And
Right.
so it would make probably most sense to come back to us.
Yeah, if they identify those infrastructure as being a priority, then
Yeah.
they could kick
Yeah.
it back to you guys.
And it wouldn't mean necessarily we have to address all of them, it's just like, work on that initial list of 6 things and put together a plan for us, a more detailed plan with priorities.
I feel like it is important to at least get this memo to them so you can get that conversation rolling with them. though.
Sure.
So if there are no objections, I mean, maybe include then some language like that, a recommendation that, you know, if there's agreement on these 6 issues, the planning commission or some other ad hoc committee could work to provide a more detailed proposal after some investment in research and,
Okay. We'd likely suggest that at the bottom here, and I'll just,
Yeah.
more forcefully be like,
yeah.
the planning commission would appreciate if any of these items would be kicked back to them so they can provide further detail on whatever items the board feel are take most priority.
I think it would be helpful to include, maybe it's not in the list, but somewhere in the text, that it could be, I guess, one of 2 things or both things, current roads, current sewer, we don't have current broadband, but, or this concept of like preparing for the future. Cause I think that's too,
Deviate between the two, or make distinction between the two.
yeah, I think it'll be more helpful for, it's sort of, I'm talking out of 2 mouths from both seats, but I think for us, it would be more helpful if the board, my other colleagues were to say, we are thinking about new growth, or we really need to shore up current. I think, you know, if they come back and be like, hey, guys, it's roads, we're sort of right back where we are sitting now.
I think that's great, that's great.
Yeah.
We didn't really think about it like that, but I think that would provide a good distinction.
Well, and the thing that we've heard a lot about, sorry, I've missed a few meetings, but, the thing that I think you'd all agree that we've heard a lot about is how anemic the broadband situation is here in Bath Township. So I think that should gain a pretty good priority, if nothing more than, you know, maybe a quarter of that allotment, you know, dedicate it to broadband or something of that nature.
It sounds like our goal really is to enhance the growth of the township and identity of the township.
Right.
So some small things, like number 5, F, to me is a small item, but that might have a big
Yeah,
impact on the township. We just
very much so.
let the world know where Bath Township is when they drive into it. Right now, you
Well,
don't
yeah,
know.
I'd like to see us be a little more current, a little more, I don't wanna say modern, because, you know, but, in tune, let's say, how's that?
Maybe signs that are more aesthetically pleasing.
Well, I just think we need to get away from those, blue stenciled, painted with a brush signs for our parks and such.
Yeah.
They serve their purpose back
We
in the
gotta
fifties.
change all our stationery.
We talked about that several years ago.
We did
Anyway.
exactly that.
And the township was supposed to act on it through the recreation department. Why don't you just talk to Ben Zeeb and make that happen? Or whoever is his boss, because he's in charge of the DPW, they must have ability to contract with somebody to make signage and put them up. Can't be a big project.
And Ray, when you're when you're talking about signage, just to Ryan's point of creating distinction, is Ray, you're talking more about like park signage. You're
Right,
talking
correct.
more about welcome to Bath.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
talking
There are
about
2 different
carte
issues.
blanche, I mean, the whole
Yeah.
thing.
You're talking about in all signage.
Updating,
Okay.
upgrading,
Yep.
with proper, I say proper, with, quality signage, how's that?
And that's another way that this could be phrased, and maybe you just kick it to the board of trustees more generally, but they could be kicked back for more detail. You could always be like, again, set aside $50,000 for signage, because it is small, low hanging fruit. Probably, I would say about one classy monument sign would be
Yes.
about $50,000.
There's a Michigan company that actually makes those beautiful signs.
Yeah, we actually are pretty blessed in this area with a
Yep.
pretty competitive signage market.
Yes, we are.
For whatever reason, maybe it's cause we're close to the capital, but, and then, you know, then you could say the rest in the infrastructure.
Yeah, so
Or
do you wanna,
however it
do you
is.
wanna, how soon do you wanna get this to the board? Do you wanna bring this
Well,
back to us again?
I guess what I was thinking, if it's okay with the rest of the planning commission, just for the sake of brevity, is we make a couple of small edits based upon this conversation tonight, and then I just email it to you, you give it your last edit, email it back,
Okay,
That sounds like a good,
and then
good
get it to
plan.
the board.
Sounds like a good plan.
If everyone is in support of that.
Yeah.
We trust you, Dan.
pressure.
No pressure,
Yeah,
no pressure.
You mentioned a big monument sign might be $50,000, which you're probably right. But is it better to have one big monument sign somewhere, or is it better to have 20 smaller signs spread out? To me, one monument sign is good if you've got one entrance into the community, but we don't, we've got several entrances into the community. So
That's a good point, Ray.
I wouldn't spend all my money on one sign.
I'd go between 1 and 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's room in the middle, you could say $200,000 for 4 nice monument signs.
You know, and one thing we're talking about here is where to allocate, if you will, this almost 1.5 million
Yeah.
of ARPA funds, but we have correct me if I'm wrong, we have one approved CIP that money has been allocated to. That's just sitting there.
Yep.
And Karen, the administration is picking away at that CIP funds that have been allocated. I'm talking about the Park Lake Trail. Absolutely nothing has been done. And how long is it gonna be before all of that CIP money that was allocated is gone, because they've used it for some ancillary cost, you know? What I'm speaking of is the, I don't know, $8,000 they used for an environmental study on a parcel of land,
Oh, that parcel.
and then didn't buy it.
Talking about buying?
Yeah, and incidentally, I checked ironically yesterday, and that has been sold to a private individual for the drastically reduced price that was offered to the township exclusively. It was February of 2023, in fact, the deed had just been dated. That was 16086 Park Lake Road. But anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, we're spending quite a bit of time here trying to brainstorm what's gonna happen to that 1.5, and we can't even figure out what the heck's gonna go on with the now 40,000 that we've allocated on a CIP.
I think we need to
Point taken, yep.
take into consideration something you said earlier too, some of these things like maybe not signs, or some of the things have fundings from other areas, and it might be more prudent to spend it on the sewer, where you're getting your kickback, your money on money.
Yeah, you
Because you need-
get rental, or basically, you know,
You're basically making money off your money
I think
versus.
these are all good considerations.
that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the other thoughts that I had, you know, we've struggled in the township with upholding our sidewalk ordinance. And it's like this history that sort of follows us. We can't figure out why we're not holding people to our ordinance, but we're not. And then we're wondering why the sidewalks are all a mess. Those things like go together. But could we take a piece of our ARPA funds, invest in sidewalk repairs, sort of as a transition to say to the community, we're now going to uphold the sidewalk ordinance. Here's this one-time sort of like,
Clean slate.
right, bring us up to speed, bring all safe, you know, you don't have to do anything, you don't have to pay you know, I replaced the sidewalk on my own very small property and it is really expensive. You know, we'll do this one time, but it's gonna come with actually holding folks accountable to the ordinances that we have on the books. It's sort of a transition.
Yeah.
I'll add sidewalk clean slate to this list.
Well, I think we should look at the concept, and unrelated, is develop a sidewalk district like we do a lighting district, and people would just pay so much annually, and the sidewalks would be maintained. So they wouldn't get shocked with that couple of $1,000 bill.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
That'd be something good to talk about in the non-motorized plan.
Yeah.
Yes, it would.
Well, you can make sidewalk districts and have, and like Meridian Township, because I know that one, but they actually have split the township up into areas. And they inspect one area every year. They rotate all the way around.
Yep,
And they mark out which sidewalks have to be repaired. The property owner is responsible for 100% of the cost. And if it's above a certain amount, they can put it on a 5-year payment plan. You don't have to pay it all at once.
So they,
Just goes on as an assessment on their taxes over a 5-year period, or they can pay it all at once if they want to, either way they wanna do it. But there's ways to do that, it's not gonna be a $2,000 bill you gotta pay tomorrow.
but they don't, there's no cost sharing among the area, in the area, none, yeah.
The only time the township pays if it's
I mean-
property that they have easements on, or something like that for sewers or whatever, then they pay that.
No, but I think, John, you're referring to some sort of kind of, almost like an insurance system, right? So
Right.
everybody in the Solid Rock District kicks into a common fund,
Yeah.
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like, that's not what Meridian Township's doing.
No, that's no.
Yeah, okay.
The way they do that on their pathway system. But then, but they have an actual millage for the pathways
Yeah,
that they keep renewing, and that's how they get their money.
That's the Parks and Rec,
Yeah.
millage.
That big green bridge down by the Oakman's,
yeah, but they
Bridge?
can't fix Oklamas
It was
Road.
mentioned by someone last time.
that big green bridge was paid for with pathway money.
Yes.
And also the one on Oakman's Road across that wetland,
Yeah.
further north.
Yep,
So
but they
that's-
can't fix Oklamas Road where it floods, and the pavement's all broke up.
You know, I looked at that yesterday and I'm thinking, why in the heck has, in the last 20 years, this thing has been flooding? Why don't they just raise it? Cause the bridge never goes underwater. Why don't they just level it
Well,
out?
they did finally raise the intersection of Oakman's and Grand
Yes.
River, MDOT
Yeah.
did that, so that didn't flood last big heavy rains we
Yeah,
had.
that was an
They used to
MDOT
flood every year.
Or they could just put a roundabout before that flooded area. Because that's essentially what it's been in the
Place to turn
last
around
2
at
weeks,
least.
right?
Hold on, if you put a roundabout in there, traffic's gonna be backed up from here to Detroit.
People are always stopping at those.
All right, well, I think we have a plan together, right, Miles?
Yeah.
All right, so you'll kick it to me, I'll do my best, I can share some things, I guess, with other people if I need to, but.
Okay.
Yep, okay. All right, good. Sorry, I'm going up to my agenda here.
New business.
So we don't have any new business, so we're skipping right to a report from planner.
Yeah, so just got 2 quick items tonight, and I guess I'll first say, apologies for a light agenda, you know, we try to keep you guys nice and busy.
Why are you apologizing?
We kinda got, well, we like to make it feel like it's worth the drive out here. And we just got a lot of things kinda going on in the background right now, we're getting into construction season, we're out on sites doing visits a lot right now, so it's just been kind of a hectic time. Hopefully we'll have a number of items coming to you guys soon. One item coming soon will be the CIP, probably gonna kick off the whole CIP for the calendar year at the next planning commission meeting. We were about 2 weeks late last year, so we're starting, 2 week cycle earlier this year. Okay, so the public sewer and water research and updates, Joey and Heather have been helping me out with looking at how we process applications for sewer connections and how we process applications for water connection, what our fee structure around those connections look like compared to other municipalities around us within those networks. What our applications look like, and then internally, how that information flows between us, the front staff, Board of Water and Light, SCUMA, me, the building department. I mean, these applications touch a lot of people, and right now, there's never been any kind of formal, workflow chart of this person does this, then it goes to this person, and we're working that out right now. There was some low hanging fruit where SCUMA just made a little bit of a change. It ended up that, 3 people got cut out of the process, so it's much faster now. We obviously found some new information about how various fees should be charged, so that was kinda interesting. We, just like with, the zoning permit fees and, special land use fees, they haven't been updated in a very long time, and so we are a little bit behind the ball on what we're taking in, and that has hurt some of our, water, service fund, our water network expansion fund and our sewer fund. Those could be better funded, and we could be more dynamic when developments come if we had the money to use in those, so that's why this kinda when we were looking at some of these developments and we only needed 500 feet of pipe, and we were like, okay, well, there should be money for that. And then there was zero. We were like, okay, well, this is a problem. So it created kind of the incentive to really address this. But it's going good. We've already updated the forms that the public fills out. One of the first changes we made was making a distinction for the forms between commercial and residential. So before it was just sewer connection form. So like a Big B Coffee was filling out the same form that like a single family homeowner was, and how the form read was confusing for the commercial development, because the form was basically written and reads for a single family home, because that's the people that use it most often. So just little small changes like that, so it's going good. We're probably going to suggest some changes to those ordinances right now we've changed internal policy, we've changed forms that the public uses, but the long-term fix here is updating fee schedules and making amendments to our current ordinances on the books. So I would expect in the next 4 to 6 months, we'll probably be bringing those to this body for a recommendation to the board.
Yep.
And we're not, by no means are we reworking the entire ordinance, small little changes just to create clarity and go over how the process was ran back in the 1990s versus how it actually works today. Because obviously there's been some changes since then.
Yeah. Great, Miles. It's good work. Thank you. Any comments from Miles? Questions? All right, so we're at another opportunity for public comment. Would anyone like to address the planning commission? No? Okay. Ryan, do you have a report for us?
I do. Give me 1 second to
Sure.
pull it up, sorry. I was so ingrained in our conversation, I didn't pull it up yet. All right, we met on April 3rd. Also a somewhat light agenda. We talked about a couple of things. The drain commissioner came and talked about, with some support from Ray, the possibility of having an easement over that property down on the south end of Webster Road for a potential trail. I have to say I've been incredibly impressed with his proactive thinking on this. You know, he really, from his perch, could, you know, sort of fold his arms and say, not my problem. But he's been, at least in my perspective, really open to thinking creatively about how we might be able to solve the problem of, you know, the individual property rights down there, but also having some public access. So a couple of the ideas that he pitched were that the township could have an easement across that property for a public trail, or he brought up the fact that the county could deed the property to the township in its entirety and retain an easement for the county to be able to access the water control structure and the berm there, which I thought was incredibly generous thought of his. In closing comments, several board members, including myself, said, you know, that seems to be the right way to go in terms of, you know, eventually a new drain commissioner would come in at some point, and maybe they wouldn't be so friendly to these ideas or so open, and having the actual ownership of the land would, I think, give us a little bit more power in the situation. So we'll see how that conversation progresses. But again, just a shout out to the drain commissioner for being a good partner in that work. We did give final approval to Sunrise Forest for their adult use marijuana retail establishment and the other permits that they had been asking for, so that should be moving forward. We did the introduction and first reading of the zoning ordinance that Miles has been working through, 3183. What would you call that?
The cleanup ordinance.
Yeah, the omnibus cleanup ordinance. So that went well. We agreed to allow the Friends of Park Lake to use the parks and facilities and have some other support from the township for some of their summer events. If you have young children or grandchildren or have been out to those, they are pretty popular over at Wiswasser Park. It's a nice addition to our community, so happy to support that. And then we approved the new police chief's employment agreement, moving him from interim to permanent, full-time chief, which is great. The board in general agreed that he has shown his mettle in these first couple of months with just some incredibly tragic situations in and around the township. He certainly had a trial by fire, and I've heard from some of our officers that he's doing a good job. In my opinion, have observed him doing a great job, so it seemed prudent to move that contract forward sooner than the intended end date of his interim status, which was supposed to be June. And then we did just a really specific MERS healthcare savings program for the treasurer, since she moved from staff to board member, to make sure she is well protected in her ability to move around the funds that she needs to in her new role. And that was it. So short and sweet.
Good.
Comments or questions for Ryan? Thank you. All right, final comments by planning commissioners.
I mentioned that I will not be able to attend the next meeting. Some of you were here when I brought that up, some came in later.
Just remember to dock his pay, we talked about that.
Yep.
I appreciate you being available, Miles, for questions and the class information they provide for us.
Yep, yep.
Miles, how do you wanna treat that open space issue, ordinance issue? You wanna wait for, you think he's gonna?
I was gonna email them and ask if they'd like to submit a text amendment. If they don't wanna submit a text, I don't see why they wouldn't. It's $250. So it's not like a huge cost, and it would set hard timelines for us. If they don't do it, we'll just move forward with the research anyways.
How, is it a proposed text amendment? So how does it work? I mean, does it have to be something that we sort of say yes or no to, or do we can work with whatever language he has? How does that work?
They will propose a language fix.
I know.
And then it will get brought to you guys, and you guys will discuss it, and just like with the text amendment with, the wind, they originally asked for 5 acres, and then after discussion with you guys, you brought it down to 1. So you can amend, after the issue gets brought, you can amend it in any way you see fit, or maybe after staff reviews it, and you guys review it, maybe we understand what their objective is, cause he was talking about road frontage, but he forgot about off-street parking. So that would need to be addressed as well.
I don't even know.
I think he's still here.
Oh, yeah, sorry, he's still here. I'm like looking over you guys. But, yeah, so that'd have to be addressed as well, but they would bring the text amendment and then give it a look over and we say, if this is the objective, this is how you get there.
Yeah, okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question to
Yeah.
that? I know one of the concerns was getting emergency vehicles back there.
Yep.
How do other states do it where that's really hard to do? I know people are like hiking in the mountains and, out in Alaska, do they just not have that be a provision, and is that an option for us?
No.
I don't wanna leave people out,
Well, I
with a
can't-
heart attack out in the field somewhere, but.
I can't speak to every municipality, but just because short time I worked in the UP, a lot of the municipalities up there have the vehicles within their, fire and police department to service those areas, so they would have ATVs that are fire department ATVs, or they would have side-by-sides for the police department.
Maybe we should add that to the ARPA
We
list.
don't have stuff like that.
A side by side with the provision for a stretcher on the back.
Yeah.
A gurney or whatever, that'd be all you would need, and I exemplified it on, this is very germane. The last township board meeting, you may have not remembered that, but, Joe had brought up at the last Park Lake Advisory Board meeting, how you're gonna get an ambulance back there. And I illustrated how you could, because I brought photos that I took of 18-wheelers back there. I mean, there was a wood chipper back there that was as big as this room, and they took it right in front of Ken Terme's house, right across that bridge back there on an 18-wheeler. And, I said, that's how you get an ambulance back there. I mean, you literally could drive a conventional, you could drive our ambulance back there, no problem
Is there a
whatsoever.
requirement for that? Because I can't imagine. I
There
can
is no
think- I can-
requirement for
Yeah,
that,
I mean, I
no.
can think of a dozen trails, that there's no way you're
Yeah.
gonna get an emergency vehicle back there.
No, they would
No,
do
I
it.
don't think you would necessarily need a requirement. Most of the municipalities I work for in the UP though, it was never an issue, cause they always
Yeah.
felt like they had the capacity to service those areas.
Cause they're built for that.
They're built for that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tourist area. They
Sure.
know that's gonna come up,
Right,
so they
right.
made those investments
Well, just
over
as if,
time.
like a snowmobile accident, I mean, they literally have a little gurney ski, sled, you know, that they put the person on and take them out.
I've been on that sled before.
I didn't want to say that.
Maybe.
That's like a non-issue,
I mean, I think it's a
was-
non-issue too. I think that, even the, I mean, I think the parking thing is a concern, but there are other places in town too where there's very, very minimal parking for sort of
Yes.
back trails, right? And for the most part, they park on public streets.
Right.
When you're talking about parking, what are you talking about?
So parking for this proposed, area near Bonnie Meadows, right?
Oh,
So-
that place,
so
okay.
There would not be off-street parking, quite likely. There's just no space for that, I don't think.
You know, in the neighborhood, people would probably walk back there, that's. getting rid
90% of the people using that, I'm sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
I literally drove my truck back there, all
And I think I
the
mentioned
trips.
this the other day, it's like, I use Lake Lansing North, right?
Yeah, that was
And
your
you can
example.
park in that little neighborhood instead of the main park area, and lots of people do it, they park right on the street.
Yep,
Even though there is a spot for like 2 cars.
well, and it's legal to park
Yeah,
on the
sure.
street, so.
We just have made such good progress in our ordinances about encouraging more open space and green space and, you know, permeable surfaces. It would be awful if we couldn't find a way to protect this land rather than have it be a development or a single home.
I think everybody's pushing in the same direction, so we should be able to make it happen, right?
Make it, you know, think, oh yeah, it's just a term of thought, you know, why not instead of why, you know?
The only thing is, once again, same concept as last meeting, and I think staff is also like, yeah, this is a great idea. Our only concern is whenever you make some kind of carve out for some kind of land use, you open yourself up to exploitation of that carve out, somebody, so we would just have to craft the language in a way that we feel comfortable, we're not making a carve out for some wealthy Bath landowner, which there are definitely some out there.
Yeah.
Northern parts of Bath, you'll go, there's some long drives and you go back to some very nice homes.
Right.
Where they take their back 40 and they put it in a 501c3, but it's essentially their, you know, now their back 40 is their own personal hunting paradise that they're not paying taxes on.
I mean, you have an easement and you have public access, those are 2 biggies, right?
Yeah.
If you get those things, you're gonna limit a lot of that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, I think.
Yeah.
Plus, those folks know how to do those things regardless of what we do.
Oh, yeah.
They have good lawyers and accountants to help them do
I'm
that.
amazed that, you see that cul-de-sac at the bottom? All of those lots, literally, all of the lots on the, what I'll say the east, northeast, those are all have houses on them.
Yeah,
Really now?
these
Big
are
houses.
being built quite aggressively.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
The other cul-de-sac to the other side of here
That.
has one house on it.
Yeah, there's
This is-
nothing over there.
There's nothing over there.
There's
right now.
there's one house right there now and a foundation.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool back there, I mean, you could take a kayak all over back there.
Oh, yeah. And when you're talking about hunting and, are there any restrictions on where people can fire a gun and
There are.
There are, yeah.
The one,
State of Michigan
the one I'm really
laws.
talking about is Messinger's property, just off Chandler Road.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
is way back in there,
Yep.
Yeah.
because he's firing guns back there all the time, and there are residents that live awful close to that. I don't know,
Well,
it's
he
like-
has I don't know if you've been back there, but there's a gravel pit back there, I mean, it's a lake, and he literally has 30-foot high banks, he's probably got a shooting range
That could be,
right in there.
I've never been back.
That doesn't
He's-
matter, I
he's-
think.
he's
You
got
couldn't
no-
get a
he's got
bullet
no-
out of there if you wanted
He's
to.
got no trespassing, but signs up all over the place there.
I think it's like 150 yards.
When I wanna see
You
something.
you can't shoot a gun or hunt within 150 yards of a house.
Way before I had my drone.
I think it's, that might not be the exact.
I don't know exact rules, but isn't it like 150 feet from a house?
I think it's,
I think it's-
significantly less than what
Maybe
you
it's-
said.
I think it's at least
Oh,
100
the
yards.
I was
feet
thinking
instead of
it was
yards?
300.
I thought it was feet, but I might be mistaken.
Yeah, you might be
I'm
right.
on private
I
property, so I'm
think
not sure.
it used to be 200.
Up here,
I think
I
it's.
just shoot out my
I think it's
bathroom window.
300 feet.
yeah, with this many homes being right here,
We could
I
go-
can't imagine that our board would ever would want guns being fired off, especially with a public trail. Cause that trail runs through here, over the hill and down through here. So we would keep that maintained. This trail had some trees down on it, so I would cut those trees off and make this accessible as well. But I can't imagine where we'd ever allow firearms out there unless the deer were just taking over so bad. that-
Yeah.
It would probably be archery permission only, and if we did, we typically shut down our natural areas when there's hunters out there.
Yeah.
But,
As long as you post like they do at Rose Lake. I mean,
yeah, our rules, on a couple of our natural areas, we allow hunting, but we shut it down October 31st through January 1st to the public. We just allow the hunters out there, but I don't see us in this specific situation, advocating for hunting with that many people using the trail. And that many people living so close. Our other natural areas are out in middle of nowhere.
Yep.
But that would be our intention, would be to keep these, and this is some pretty solid access for emergency vehicles, if they had to get through this easement through here. I think it was 33 feet wide, and I might be slightly off.
is that where that power line is?
It's been a long time since I've been out there. I
That-
believe this power line right through.
Yeah,
there.
that's where it is, right there where that cleared area. That's,
Okay.
I mean, it's a huge power line.
Yeah, we want to keep the trail open and safe for if anyone had to get through there. We don't want anyone to get injured from hiking, so we would keep the trails wide open, dead snags taken out of there. Hopefully, meet some nice volunteers in the area to really take ownership of the natural area. And we would want to keep it safe and open, and we'd be looking at wildlife restoration out there. It's Phragmites removal, buckthorn removal. We want to make sure that we're keeping these places well stewarded for the public and for the natural world.
All right.
But, yeah, in that case, I don't wanna keep you too long, I will speak with them about getting an application. in.
Okay.
So, we can move that forward, I'm imagining he'd be supportive of doing an application to give you guys a timetable, and if you need any more information about MMLC, what we do, cause I might have glossed over some of the things that we do and what our services, please feel free to reach out to me and I can give you more information.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments tonight? All right, there are no objections, then we can adjourn.
None.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Time.